All right, excellent. So again, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us again this morning for our final session of the SBS Summer Series. This topic today is on building your network, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means and maybe a different word that you can refer to networking as. So again, we'll do brief introductions. My name is Rachel Noto. I'm one of the assistant directors on the SBS career team, and I do focus primarily on the SBS sponsored career fairs. I work with Carol on the SBS in Boston internship program, and I do host one-on-one student appointments. So glad to have you join us this morning. And Carol?
Thanks, Rachel. And I'm Carol Sherrick. I'm the Director of Career and Professional Development here in SBS. I oversee the SBS shadowing program, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on, and just sort of manage all of the stuff that that our great staff do to help you guys move forward on your career and professional development.
Great. And not joining us today, but also on our team, we do have Associate Director Rebecca Bell. And then we have Odessa, who has been joining us this week as well. She's our Assistant Director, but she is unable to join today. So just introducing all of our team there. So as we mentioned, building your network, thinking about networking as perhaps just making professional connections. So sometimes that term can get a bad rap, right? So perhaps you're thinking of networking and you get intimidated, or you think, oh, I need to dress professionally. I need to be on top of my game when I'm talking to an employer. Well, we want you to think of networking as just having a conversation. So by you being here today, you're actively networking right now. You're taking time out of your schedule to learn more professional development skills and put your best self forward. So that is networking, having that conversation. So how can you do it? So some ways that we'll go through today, you can request an informational interview. So we'll go through, how you can do that appropriately and what questions you should be asking. We'll talk about how you can attend a conference and build your connections. So that would be a virtual conference like that's happening this fall. Job shadowing, so Carol's going to highlight that a little bit throughout our presentation. And then again, participating in career fairs. So that's what's going to happen in the fall. Sorry about that, not attending the conference. But that's another professional development opportunity that you can take part in. Some benefits for making professional connections, not only just putting yourself out there and enhancing your self-confidence, but also learning more about job opportunities earlier on in the game. Perhaps you're connecting with someone that's in your industry of interest. So that would happen during perhaps like a job shadow or an informational interview. And then you're gaining a professional reference. So that's always really important to have as you're applying to more jobs and internships in the working world. Okay, so I briefly mentioned this earlier this week, but just as a reminder, we are hosting our virtual career fair through Handshake this fall. So last year it was with Career Fair Plus, so that's a different platform. So most of you should be familiar with Handshake, as Odessa walked us through that earlier this week. But again, I did mention this too. As you sign up with meetings for employers, that's going to happen just about a week before our career fair. You'll actually be registering for the event once you schedule a one-on-one meeting with an employer. So you do not have to separately necessarily just RSVP for this event. So that's something that's different on Handshake. Additionally, we always do host some workshops in the fall semester. So be on the lookout for those on Handshake, whether they will be virtual or in person perhaps. I'll definitely be hosting some workshops to help you navigate the Handshake portal just specifically for career fairs. And they do also have, so the Handshake fairs, you can do a one-on-one meeting with an employer, or if you do prefer like a group session, kind of similar to like an in-person information session, you can meet with other students and employers at the same time. So a lot of good options here with this platform. And then, of course, in the meantime, if you'd like to have your resume reviewed by one of us as your SBS career advisors, we highly encourage you to be working on that over the summer, as we mentioned earlier this week as well, just so you can have your resume uploaded to your Handshake profile. Everything's up to date and ready to go, and employers can actively be searching for your profile in preparation for the career fair. So any questions on that? It was just a little brief snippet of, what it's going to look like in the fall. But again, if you have specific questions, I'd love to take them at this time. So I'll give you a moment. Okay, great. So who do you think you should network with? So we're going to open the chat feature now, and I'd like for you to just type in the chat for me, who do you think you can network with that's going to help build your professional connections? Who comes to mind that could be in your inner circle or who's already in your network? Your professors, alumni, friends? Yes, excellent. Anyone else that comes to mind? These are all great. Former coworkers? Yes, absolutely. Excellent. Great. So I listed a few here. They want to come up. Here we go. So even starting within your family and friends, so thinking of who's already in your inner circle that you can just, again, have that conversation with. Perhaps you're really interested in like the PR or marketing industry, and you have a connection or a family member that works at a marketing firm. That's a perfect chance to just ask them to have a conversation with you about, these are what my interests are. Do you have any recommendations for me along my career pathway? Or can you give me a glimpse of a day-to-day in the life of working in a marketing firm? So these are just very authentic conversations that you could be having with family members, friends. You mentioned alumni and professors, absolutely. Former coworkers too, that was a response. So yes, they're included. Thinking of also, us as the Office of Career and Professional Development, you can be networking with us and asking us for any type of career pathway advice too. And then more, of course. So we're going to get started and walk you kind of through a few different great platforms that a lot of our students have had success with. So those are some key instruments there that are going to help you have those authentic conversations. So we'll get into that momentarily. All right, so I will stop sharing. Carol, if you'd like to pull up LinkedIn, and then we can get started walking through that.
Sure.
And if any of you have questions like throughout as we're going through, feel free, type in the chat, unmute yourself. We'd love to answer them.
Okay, so right now we are in LinkedIn, and can you all let me know? I probably don't have the right view, but how many of you, or who has a LinkedIn account already? You can raise your hand or put it in the chat. One. Okay, so LinkedIn is sort of social media, but it's more kind of professional, a professional social media tool. It's not really social so much, or at least that's not its primary purpose. It's a tool for you to use to kind of present yourself in a professional way, meaning it's a place where you can talk about the work or volunteering experiences that you've had, activities that you've been involved in, that kind of thing. And it's also a place where you can make connections with all of those people who were on the list that we just came up with, who would be in your network, as well as reach out to people that aren't already in your network, to try to connect with them, to learn from them. And so we're going to look a little bit at the parts of a LinkedIn profile, and then I'm going to show you how you can search for UMass alumni in LinkedIn, because there's a lot of learning that can happen there as well. So in general, your LinkedIn account is going to, one of the most important pieces is to have a photo. I think Odessa probably talked about this in terms of handshake, but you want to have a photo. It doesn't have to be professionally taken. It can just be, you know, somebody takes a photo of you, you know, with a decent outfit from the waist up, you know, so it's a professional looking photo. It's of you dressed as if you were maybe going to be working. You want to have some kind of title, and so your title could be either your major, something about your major. It could be something aspiring, that you're aspiring to work in a particular field. It could say UMass student. You know, there are lots of ways that you can do this, and one of the ways to figure out what to put for your title is to look at at the profiles of other students and see how they've done it, because some of them you'll like and some of them you won't like, and just looking at other people's profiles can help you sort through that. If you have an internship, you can list your internship title there as your title. So that's kind of the primary thing. My schools show up here because when you fill out your profile, you'll enter UMass Amherst as one of your schools, so that'll show up. And then there's a place to write a summary or an about section, and this is where you can really kind of give more color to your experiences that you've had, or the things that you're trying to do, the skills that you've had. And this is a place where you can get in a lot of keywords, because some employers use keywords to search for potential candidates. And so this is a good place where you can kind of say what you're good at, what the skills are that you have, and those will come up in a keyword search for an employer. So then there's an experience section, and this is where you can put information about the jobs that you've had, the internships that you've had. There's another, somewhere, there's an activities section, or you can just add your clubs and activities to your experience section. And again, some profiles you'll see it just lists the title and it doesn't list any of the responsibilities or the things that you did in your internship, your job, your club or activity. It's really important to really spell out the things that you've done, so that whoever's looking at your profile can really see what that experience was for you, rather than just seeing what your title was, because your title doesn't necessarily tell people very much about yourself. And then there's an education section. You can take a little skills quiz that will add some keywords to your profile about different skills that you have. And then down at the bottom, this is kind of an important piece of LinkedIn, is you can say which organizations you're interested in, which industries you're interested in. And this can be really important when you're applying for a job, because most companies and organizations have a LinkedIn page for their company. And if you want, so let's say you were applying for a job at Google, for example, you would want to follow Google's LinkedIn account, because if Google is interested in you, their recruiters are probably going to look at LinkedIn to see if you have a LinkedIn account. And if you have already followed Google on LinkedIn, that just shows the recruiter that you've already expressed an interest in their company. So it seems like a small thing, but every little bit helps when you're in the job search. So that's kind of the quick overview of what the profile looks like. So just notice this: edit public profile and URL. LinkedIn allows you to create your own personalized URL. And so if you look at the URL on my screen, you can see that it's linkedin.com/in/my name. if you just set up your LinkedIn account just randomly, it's going to generate a random URL that has a bunch of random letters at the end, but you can fix it so that it just has your name. It's more specific to you. And that, you know, it's not something that you have to do, but it's just makes it a little bit easier for you to share your LinkedIn profile. And it also shows an employer that you actually kind of know something about LinkedIn that maybe not everybody knows. So it's just a little extra little tip there.
And also, if you put your URL on your profile or on your resume, rather, that's huge. Like a lot of students don't really realize that at first, and nor did myself. So, you know, getting rid of those extra letters and numbers does really clean up your resume nicely too. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. So before we go to look at how to search for alumni, does anyone have any questions about the profile itself? I can't see the chat, Rachel, so if you could.
I'm watching it if anything comes in. Oh, no questions. Okay, I think we're good to move forward.
Okay, great. So right now we're looking at LinkedIn from inside of my profile. So I'm going to go to my home page. And this is where information from the people that I follow comes in. So this is kind of like your news feed. If you're on Facebook, you have a news feed, and this is kind of the equivalent of that. So Central Career Services has posted this thing, and I follow them, and so it shows up in my news feed. It's a good way to kind of keep track of what the people in your network are doing professionally. If someone that you're connected with through LinkedIn has some big thing that they want to announce about a success that they've had or something, this is a good way for you to find out about it, and also to comment on it, or to just like it, or can say congratulations, or whatever it is. And that's a way to kind of keep that relationship warm, to keep that connection warm, and to let that person know that you're following them and that you're aware of their success. And that's just a good way, a good and easy way to keep that connection strong. And also to encourage them when you have some success to share on LinkedIn. It will encourage them to comment on yours as well, to interact with your professional profile as well. So that's just a little bit about that. And this is also where you could write something, you could share something about your own successes, or about a piece of, you know, let's say, like Rachel said, you're interested in marketing and PR position. If there was some piece of big news in the PR world, you could maybe share an article here or something like that. So this is the homepage. And then what I'm going to do now is show you how to search for UMass alumni in LinkedIn. So if you go to the search bar up here, it comes up, UMass comes up for me because I do this a lot, but it probably won't automatically come up for you. And so you need to type in University of Massachusetts, and sometimes you have to type in the whole word, or the whole name, or you won't see it. But because it comes up for me, I'm just going to click on it here. And this takes me to the UMass LinkedIn account. And so the reason that I go to the UMass LinkedIn account is to find alumni. And so you can see all these segments here, and one of them is alumni. So I'm going to click on that. And one thing to know, so it says there are almost 183,000 alumni. So one thing to know about that is that it's not just alumni, it's current students, it's staff and faculty. It's really anyone who says that they've ever had anything to do with UMass is going to show up in this list. but most of those are alums. And so right now it's just showing us all of the alums and faculty and staff and students who are associated with UMass. If there was a specific person that you were looking for, you could type in their name and their profile would come up. But one of the really cool things that you can do with this is you can sort by where people live, where they work. If you go to next, you can search by what they do, what they studied, what they're good at, and how you're connected. And what I usually do is look at one of these. So maybe I'm looking for, and if you click show more, it'll scroll down a little bit. So maybe let's stick with the marketing theme since that's the one we keep looking at. So maybe I'm looking for alums who are working in the marketing field and they live in New York. And so now we're narrowing it down. Now we've got 673. And I want to connect with people who work for the Estee Lauder company. So this Estee Lauder is a makeup company, also a consumer packaged goods is a company that sells products like that makes products. And so maybe I'm interested in that. Doesn't have to be the makeup industry necessarily that I'm interested in, but just working in consumer packaged goods. And I would like to connect with somebody who's working in a company like that to find out what that's like. So now we've narrowed it down to 3 people. And I'm going to click, just for no reason in particular, I'm going to choose Julie Abrams. She's a planner, MAC. I don't know what that means at Estee Lauder in New York. And then I can look at her work history to see what her career path has been, and that can be really helpful. She majored in marketing, so she was in Eisenberg. She graduated in 2002, and it looks like her first job out of UMass was working for Bloomingdale's, which is a retail company. She had a couple of jobs there. Then she switched over to Ann Taylor, which is another clothing company. Then she went to Macy's, which is similar to Bloomingdale's, and she was, having progressively more advanced roles throughout. And now she is an account planner for Estee Lauder. And an account planner usually has something to do with advertising and marketing. And so if she was somebody that I would like to make a connection with, that I would like to maybe ask her questions about her career path and ask her advice on how I could get started in that career, I would try to connect with her. And I'm hoping that she actually has an account that I can do this. So she has her account settings different than what I was hoping to show you, but you can request to connect with her, and I'm going to do it and just see what happens. Sometimes it doesn't allow you to leave a note, and sometimes it does, but let's see. So it looks like Julie says she would rather that people follow her than connect with her. I don't personally know her, so I'm not actually going to request to connect with her. Let's go back and look at one of the other people. So let's look at Jennifer. Oh, maybe she has hers set the same way. This could be a new function of LinkedIn. So LinkedIn changes a lot. Let's try one more. Interesting.
Maybe it is a new feature.
Yeah, okay, here. So I did choose connect, even though it said she prefers people to follow her. And so this is what happens then. You can customize this invitation. You can add a note to personalize your invitation to Mary. So you would want to add a note because Mary doesn't know who you are or why you're requesting to connect with her. And most people are just going to ignore that connection request if they have no idea who you are or why you want to connect. And so you would just add a brief note. I'm a student at UMass. This is my major. I'm hoping to learn from you about the field of yada, yada. You only have 300 characters to do that in, so it needs to be pretty short, but it's definitely important to do that rather than to just randomly select a connection or choose connect without leaving a note. So one thing that I would encourage all of you to do is to look up Rachel and myself and Odessa and to request a connection with us and make sure that you include a note. It's a good way, once you set up, for those of you who don't have LinkedIn, once you create your account, request a connection with us. Let us know who you are, even though we know who you are. Send us a little note because it's good practice. We'll accept your connection request, and then that will start you building your network. Building your professional community is another way to think about that. So does anyone have any questions about any of the stuff that we just talked about? Or any comments or wondering why we need to do any of this? Or
There was something that was put in the chat as a request to send over. So Central Career Services has that PowerPoint just specifically on LinkedIn that kind of just walks students through like each section. So that was requested. So I'll be sending that out in a follow-up email.
great. Okay. And even if you don't have, like, even if you haven't had jobs or internships, you've done things, right? Like you got accepted to UMass. And so that means that there was something about your application that set you apart from other people, and you've had some experiences, clubs or activities that you've been involved in, volunteering, that kind of thing. All of those are things that you can put in your LinkedIn profile, similarly to what you would put in your resume. Your LinkedIn profile is really just sort of the digital version of your resume, but it can be more expansive than that. So definitely recommend that you build a LinkedIn profile.
Carol, there was one question that came through. Why is there first degree and second degree next to the connections you make?
Okay, good question. So let's go back. Just from mine. Yep. So I'm going to click on my connections, and most of the ones, so right here, this person is a first degree connection. And what that means is that this is a connection that I've made with somebody directly. If we go, I'm going to try to think of somebody who's a second level connection. Yep. So this person is a second level connection. We're connected because we're both, I'm not actually in the UMass Amherst economics department, but I go to UMass, or I have UMass as my, in part of my profile as a place that I work. And maybe Timmy has also worked at UMass or went to UMass, right? And so we haven't connected with each other one-on-one in LinkedIn, but we share this common thing that connects us. So just as Rachel was saying that, and some of you listed in the people who are in your network, your friends, your classmates, your professors, your career advisors, all of the people who go to UMass are now part of your network. And so Timmy is part of my network because we're both affiliated with UMass in some way. So really what that says, and our mutual connection is Dean Hurd. He's the Dean of SBS. So anybody that I'm connected with, you're now connected with, right? Once you connect with me and with Rachel, you're also connected to everybody that we're connected with. So that's why LinkedIn is a really powerful tool, is that it exponentially expands your professional community, and allows you. So if I wanted to send Timmy a message, not to connect with him, but to send him a message, I can't do that right now because we're not first level connections. But I could ask John Hurd to make an introduction, and then Timmy would probably connect with me. So John would contact both of us and say, hey, I think it would be great if you two could meet. We would then connect, and then we could have messaging exchanges through LinkedIn without being locked out for each other. So it's a way to just kind of build your connection, to ask your first level connections to connect you to somebody else. And that's really how networking works, right? A network isn't just the people that you know, but it's the people that they know. So maybe there's somebody in your family who has a friend who works in marketing and you haven't met that person. But when you tell the person in your family what you're trying to do, they say, oh, I know this person and I could connect you to them. So one thing that I say to students all the time is, don't be afraid to talk to people about what you think you want to do, or what kind of internship you're trying to get, or what you're really interested in studying, because everybody that you tell maybe knows somebody that they could connect you with. But if you don't tell anybody, then nobody knows what you're trying to do, and they can't connect you with somebody who's working in that field because they don't know that you want that. They don't know that that's what you're trying to do. So don't be afraid to talk about, and share with people what you're trying to do. People are curious. People like to know that stuff, and it can only help you. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now, but if you have questions, please feel free.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. All right, from current slide. Okay, thank you so much, Carol, for walking us through LinkedIn. Again, as she mentioned, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to, one, connect with us on LinkedIn, and also feel free to send us an email, and we'd be happy to answer those questions for you. So as Carol was talking about, making these connections in a virtual world, so something that's really big is connecting with intention, right? So as Carol mentioned through LinkedIn, if you're going to connect with someone, be courteous and send them a personal note so they know why you're reaching out to them, rather. So one way of connecting with intention is this new platform called Connect UMass. So have any of you created an account? And if you can, again, use the raise hand feature to show us. Awesome. Yang is on top of it today. Excellent. So that was one of your action items on the resource sheet that I sent you. So that's great. So thank you for doing that. So what I'd like to do is actually briefly walk you through Connect UMass. And you all have access to create an account with your UMass information. So this is what it looks like. If you have not signed up yet, you can absolutely do that here. It is connectumassalumni.com. And what this is, it's a professional platform which allows you to develop those personal and professional connections, again, building that authentic community with UMass alumni. So all of the alums that are on here, I believe there's just over 6,000 now. So the platform is growing pretty rapidly. So this is through the UMass Alumni Network. And all these alums are expressing high interest in connecting with you. So what does that mean? That means that they're expressing interest in helping you prepare for your job interviews, helping review your resumes, all of these great features of this new platform. So let's take a look All right, so UMass Amherst login. Again, using your UMass information.
So one of the things that's different about LinkedIn and Connect UMass and a nicer feature of Connect UMass is that, like Rachel said, these alums have already indicated that they're interested in helping you. So on LinkedIn, people are on LinkedIn, they have their professional profiles. Some of them are very active on LinkedIn. Some of them created a profile a long time ago and don't really do very much with LinkedIn. Some people are going to respond to you on LinkedIn and some people aren't. And it's not personal if people don't respond. It just means maybe they don't have time right now, or maybe they're not paying attention, or you know, maybe they're not really open to having a career conversation with you. But on Connect UMass, these people have already said, I really want to be a resource for students. So it's a much, I want to call it a warmer way to reach out to somebody, because you already know that they want to connect with you.
Yeah, very well said there. Absolutely. And I feel like students will get a sense of that as they navigate this site as well. So something I'd like to do is just take a look at the tabs on the top. So explore the community, groups, jobs, discussion, all of these up here. We want you to dive into each of these after you create your profile. And you can actually link your LinkedIn account to this profile and it will pull in all of the information from your LinkedIn. So this way you don't have to create multiple different accounts and retype everything. So that's a great feature of this. So one of my favorite tabs is Explore the Community. So you can actively see how many users are here on this community, the online users, so people that are actually online right now, which is pretty cool. So let's say you want to connect with someone. Let's just click on this alum. You can navigate through their profile. So this student is a recent grad, currently seeking a full-time teaching position. Perhaps you also want to seek a full-time teaching role in the next few years, and that's an aspiration of yours. So you can see a little bit about her background, you know, when she graduated, which college she graduated from. And then this is explaining here what she's interested in helping you with. So specifically relocation, resumes or CVs, starting a new career or pivoting. Also, you can scroll down and you can see a little bit more about each of the alums here. But let's say that you read through Taylor's profile and you're like, okay, I want to connect with her because, you know, we both want to become teachers in the near future. So you can actively message her here. And this is a really, really cool feature, which I really like. So let's say you start typing to Taylor and you don't really know what to say, right? So sometimes when you go through that, you can always message us and ask if you'd like us to edit or review what you're going to type. But even if you come across these 3 tabs here, perhaps you just want to explore your career options in teaching. So you can click on or hover over career exploration. These are already pre-made templates that are already set up for you. So this is huge, right? So it's already this very professional introduction. When you're reaching out to an alum, you want to make sure that you're asking the right questions. So this is a really cool feature. And let's say you want to expand your network or your community. So this is just kind of genuinely asking Taylor to connect with you about perhaps like a career move or just to connect with her about her interests and passions and things like that. So that is a really cool feature right there that LinkedIn does not have, again.
And I would just say you can use those templates to help get yourself started, but you probably want to edit them a little bit depending on who the exact person is, what their history is, what you're trying to get out of it. So you don't have to use the exact wording of the template, but it's just a good way to get yourself started.
Yes, absolutely. Great way to get started. And then as you navigate this portal as well, you could see different groups that you can be a part of. So those UMass grads that are now in San Diego, they can join this group and they can have a conversation. The jobs tab is not completely developed at this point. That's what I was told most recently. But some of these jobs compared to, let's say, Handshake, these aren't necessarily entry-level positions. So you want to be mindful of that. Like if you're looking through this, we always recommend to also use Handshake too, to make sure that you're looking for positions that are along your industry of interest and along your career pathway interests. So this maybe requires like 5 years of experience. So perhaps that's not something that you would necessarily look further into, but this is being further developed, this feature. The discussion tab as well. So this is pretty cool. They do post weekly tips in here, so you can navigate this portal again and kind of see what's going on or what people are discussing. This is just like a breakdown of the community. As I mentioned, 6,000 plus have activated their UMass or Connect UMass account. And this kind of just walks you through like how to navigate the portal. There's different resources and events as well. So there's like a UMass alumni networking event that takes place, and you can learn a little bit more about that as well. But again, going back, if you go to my profile, so again, these things are pretty consistent here, making sure you have that professional photo or headshot. So I do have the same picture for like my LinkedIn Connect UMass accounts and Handshake as well. Putting your title here. And this again is all pulled directly from my LinkedIn. So if you take a look right here on the right, it says import LinkedIn profile. So if you have your primary focus right now on further developing your LinkedIn, perhaps you can create your Connect UMass account and then you can import your LinkedIn profile. So this way you don't have to retype all of these things. So that's pretty helpful right there. And there's also like when you send someone a message, this is your inbox up here or any notifications that you can receive. But you can also, as you explore the community and you click on that tab, like where I was going to message that alum, you can do a specific tailored search as well. So kind of similar to Handshake, how you can really filter down like location, industry of interest, and things like that. Very similar. Like if you were to filter by location, let's say Boston, and you can apply. And that will again filter your UMass alum community just specifically to over 1,000 users that are in the Boston, Mass area. So you can do that by major, degree, and extra filters as well. So that's a pretty cool feature. But again, like Carol mentioned, this is more specific outreach and you may get a response a little bit quicker and more authentically, since these are users that have actively expressed high interest in connecting with you. So are there any questions before we move forward to the last piece of the workshop? Any questions at all that came up? All right. Excellent. So the last piece of the presentation today, just on informational interviews. So we also did send you this guide last week. So if you did not receive it for any reason, please feel free to reach out to me. But our informational interview guide is very helpful. So again, like backtracking, during the beginning of this presentation, we talked about informational interviewing as a way to, build those authentic relationships and also have a greater sense of community with like your professional connections. So let's say perhaps you were interested in job shadowing someone, or you just want to connect with someone about your areas of interest just to see, I have these interests in, again, marketing. Can I really envision myself working in a marketing firm? So that's when you would reach out to someone, and you can utilize the LinkedIn platform or perhaps Connect UMass or email to do that. These are the do's and don'ts of informational interviews. So of course you want to be upfront and introduce yourself and state how you got this person's contact information. So if you're doing that through LinkedIn, you want to send that note. Or perhaps you're reaching out through email, and you can reach out to this person and say that you are a current UMass student and you found them as a connection on LinkedIn and you would like to meet for a cup of coffee or connect through a Zoom session just to get to know them a little bit better. So being clear about how much of their time you are asking for. So let's say perhaps you want to grab that cup of coffee. If it's for 30 minutes, make sure you draft those questions for yourself. So perhaps it's only 2 to 3 questions that you're able to ask. So being mindful of that person's time because they are taking the time out of their schedule to meet with you. So that's important. And I just mentioned too, preparing your questions ahead of time. So the worst thing is to show up and then perhaps you may be a little bit nervous or not really know how to start the conversation. So for that reason, to avoid that from happening, we recommend that you have, maybe a list of like 3 to 5 questions that you'd like to ask, and maybe you only get to a few of them, but that's okay. It's always better to be better prepared than not. And then you want to thank that person for their time. Of course, like we mentioned before, that could be through an email, verbally, and also through a follow-up email as well. So that's always very respectful. And you can also inquire if there's others that you might contact. So perhaps you start having a really great conversation with this person and they have a secondary contact that they'd like to put you in touch with. Make sure you follow up with that and see if there's another level of connections that you could be making to enhance your professional community. And then, of course, you want to find a quiet location to talk. So whether that be through Zoom, as we've all learned over this past year, making sure that you don't have any distractions. If you do get that cup of coffee, make sure maybe it's not a super busy place or that you can hear each other talking, because that's really important. And that's huge for that person taking some time out of their schedule. So you want to be respectful and mindful of that as well. And these are some don'ts on the right side. Carol, do you want to go through like some of these and why perhaps they're not recommended?
Sure. So don't be afraid to reach out and contact people. That's how you get started. And just keep in mind that the people who you're reaching out to are just people. We're all in this together. Don't be afraid to reach out. And like I was talking about with LinkedIn and even with Connect UMass or however you're trying to make connections with people, if somebody doesn't respond, it's probably not personal. It probably has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. And that's okay. But you made the effort. And, if you reach out to somebody and you don't hear back from them, maybe give it a couple of weeks, send another email. And then if you still don't hear from them, you can move on to the next. Don't be late or reschedule at the last minute. That's sort of a just kind of in general professional skill to have. These people, if you've invited them for a career conversation, they're doing you a favor, and they're taking time out of their busy schedule to do this with you. And so being late or rescheduling at the last minute is disrespectful of their time, and shows that you're maybe not as professional as you could be. So this is not the place to ask for a job or an internship. You never know what's going to come out of one of these conversations, but nobody likes to say no. And chances are the person that you're talking to is not in a position is not the person that does the hiring in their organization. And so, if you ask them for a job or an internship, chances are they're not going to be able to really help you with that directly. And so they would have to say no. And that just makes them feel bad and it makes you feel awkward. And this is just the place for learning. You're learning from their experience. And if you go into the conversation with that mindset, you never know, like maybe they are in a position to hire, or maybe they know of an opening, or maybe in 2 weeks, they're going to hear of an opening and remember that they had this conversation with you. So go into these conversations just as information seeking and trying to learn from their experience. Don't dominate the conversation with info about yourself. So certainly they'll have questions for you as well. But really it's important to let them do the talking. You're trying to learn from them. And so plan kind of a brief intro of yourself and maybe why you're hoping to talk to them. And there will be back and forth conversation, but make sure that you're not dominating. Don't wing it. Again, going back to these are people who are professionals and they're taking time out of their busy schedules to have this conversation with you. You need to be prepared. You need to have learned something about them. You need to have learned something about their organization. And by learning something about them, I mean, just like look at their LinkedIn profile and see where they've worked before. And you need to come with questions, like Rachel said before. You don't want to look unprepared because, again, that's disrespectful to their time. It's unprofessional looking on you. You just want to make sure that you're prepared and that you've done your homework. And then you need to make sure that you send a thank you note after. Whether that's an email, whether that's a handwritten note, whether it's both, you need to do it quickly to appreciate the time that they've taken out of their busy schedule to have this conversation with you, and also to appreciate the wisdom that they've imparted. And also because it's a way to keep that connection going. It shows them that you're respectful of their time and their wisdom, but also reminds them of who you are. And you can also follow up a month from now and say, hey, we talked about this thing. I just wanted to update you on where things are with my search or whatever. Just keep that connection warm by following up with them quickly. And then, a month or so later, 3 months later, and a back and forth conversation will continue. And then the other thing that I just wanted to add, when you're reaching out to people for these career conversations, it's really important that you don't drop the ball in the conversation. And so if you ask somebody for an informational interview and they respond to you with, yes, I'd like to do that. Maybe they offer you some times, or they ask you when you were hoping to meet or something like that. You need to respond. You need to always make sure that the ball isn't hanging in your court, so that you haven't forgotten to respond, or you haven't left that person kind of dangling out there wondering like where you went, since you're the one who asked for the conversation. You need to be really responsive. And we actually have a spreadsheet where you can track if you're doing a lot of heavy kind of outreach to people. It's important to keep track of that, of who you've reached out to, why you reached out to them, and whose turn it is to respond, so that you don't end up being the one that dropped the ball. And we can send you that after the conversation as well. Rachel, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you covered that very nicely. And I think the only additional thing was just sharing the questions. So, sometimes the hardest part is generating that list of questions to ask, right? So that's part of being prepared as well. And just to be mindful of our time today, we do have a few minutes left, but we just want to share these sample questions with you. Perhaps you can start off the conversation with asking how this person began in their industry or field. Maybe what are some personal characteristics they believe are helpful for success in their career. So all of these answers that they're going to give you are going to help you along your career pathway. Again, so you're just getting some information out of this individual, and it's going to help clarify some things for you, which is really nice. And we do have that entire guide for you. So we do have a longer list of questions for you to actually walk through. But think about, what's the ultimate goal of this conversation? What do you hope to learn a little bit more about, perhaps at the end of your conversation? And why did you reach out to this individual in the first place? So keeping those thoughts in your mind as you're going into this informational interview, which again, it's not necessarily networking or that scary word, but it's having that professional conversation, building up that professional community that you're aspiring to do. So all of these things are going to help you along your career pathway as well. And with that, so as we're closing out our series this week. We really appreciate your time joining us this week. I know it's been really nice and really hot out. So again, we really appreciate your time and your commitment to our SBS Summer Skills series. And we will be following up with you through email, just like we have been every afternoon. And I'll share these slides with you, the recordings, and also there will be a short checklist of items for you to take a look at this summer. So there's just 5 items on that checklist, and we'll go through those and you can see what you can actively be working on. So although this series has ended after today, we'd like for you to continue having that conversation with us and building the relationships with us by whether that means scheduling a handshake appointment, reaching out to us through email, making sure you connect with us on LinkedIn and other platforms. So that's really important, is how you follow through on these action steps. Right, so going back to the beginning of the week when we talked about SMART goals, perhaps you can continue building upon those and send them to us so we know where you are in your career pathway. And just let us know how you're doing. We'd love to hear from you. Carol, do you have any closing thoughts?
I don't think so. I think you've covered it. We really appreciate you all joining us this week. And, you know, this is an ongoing process, and the fact that you're engaging with it now kind of sets you apart from your peers. And so you should feel good about that. And like Rachel said, just continue connecting with us and meeting with us about all of this stuff, because our goal and the work that we do is to help you be successful. And so we want to keep hearing from you. We want to see you at our events or in advising appointments in the fall. So thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Carol. Are there any questions before we close out the session today? Any final comments?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if that's it, we will be in touch through email, again, with everything, meaning this presentation, the recording, some LinkedIn help, and some other additional resources that we mentioned. So we thank you very much again for joining us, and enjoy your afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.